Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. There's been some very interesting information that's been released over the last week or two about the potential of CZ in the Czech Republic buying Colt's defense. And recently had a Q&A last night where it was flooded with questions and what my thoughts were on the possibility of this happening. Now, right now, it is still in process. It has not been completed. Neither company has made any public statements on it. However, the information is very, very clear that this doesn't tend to go through, and everybody kept asking me what I thought, so I figured I would make a video and I'd give you what my thoughts are. Now, I do go on some of these channels and I do read some of the comments, and the first thing to address is this a good idea? Abso-freaking-lutely, this is a good idea. For the first time, Colt has the potential of being bought by an actual firearms manufacturer rather than an investment firm who basically who's been bleeding the company dry for the last probably 100 years, which is why one of the reasons why Colt has been in the position that it has been. If you were to visit the Colt plant, you would see a lot of antiquation. You would see a lot of old machines. You would see a very, very poorly kept up facility because there's no money. Has Colt made money in the past? Yes, they have. They've made very large amounts of money, especially with the global war on terror. Now, that problem is that money was never invested back into the company. The shareholders took their money and ran. So Colt was left to run on bare bones. They weren't able to update, which is one of the things that was interesting when I was doing Black Rifle 2, and I went up to Dimaco at the time, which ended up being Colt Canada, and you would see a company that was all modern machinery, modern upkept facility. It was hard to believe that that was so much more advanced than what they had at Colt Defense. So by having a firearms manufacturer go in there, their whole point is going to be to build firearms to make money. And also you have the focus on quality because CZ is known for quality. Now, that focus is just what Colt needs. Now, Colt does have a potential to come back. It does have that. There are certain things that have to happen for it to happen. Now, as you may or may not know, CZ has got a plant they have or is coming in Arkansas. Now, would that be a good place to move Colt, to get Colt out of Connecticut? Certainly. The biggest problem with that is you have a lot of talented Colt in that factory that have been there for generations that you could potentially lose, who wouldn't want to move out of Connecticut to move back down to the to any other location, and that's one of the biggest cruxes that Colt would have. But in order for Colt to be successful, it has to get out of Connecticut. It has to get away from the Union, and it needs to have a state that's friendly to the products that it makes, which Colt has been bailed out several times by the state of Connecticut, so Colt Holding Company and those investors out of New York have a lot of loyalty to Connecticut. By having a company coming in who has no loyalty to the state or to that area, they want to fix the company. They can bring that to a new location and set it up and start off from scratch without those issues. Now, for as far as what it takes to get this company back up and running, this is not rocket science. Many people will claim that, well, it was the investment group that caused a lot of Colt's problems. You know what? They caused a lot of their problems with money, yes, but they didn't cause the problems with their lack of R&D and their lack of new products, and the fact that everything that they would produce was always bringing something back rather than bringing out something new. Right now, some of the Colt's biggest challenges is because of a failure of R&D and a failure to develop is they are a company that is set up for military contracts to develop to have large volumes of military contracts. The problem is they don't have products any longer that are going to get them those contracts. Now, if you look at Colt's history with having handguns, they were a major manufacturer. They manufactured for the U.S. government the 1911 pistols. Once that was gone, Colt's ability to have a military pistol was done. During General Keyes' reign, he come in and said that Colt will never develop or make a 9mm handgun as long as he is at the helm, where that cost Colt the ability to have a candidate in the XM17 program. The XM17 program was the first, at least for the last 100 plus years, or well over 100 years, that the U.S. government has had a open tender for a new handgun that Colt has not had an entry. Now, granted, the SSP that Colt had in the XM9 program and some of the SOCOM pistols, Colt did not win, but you can't win if you don't play the game. You can't win, you can't lose if you don't play. They did play. Granted, what they put in for for instance, the Mark 23 program, that pistol, there was no way in hell that was going to win. It was still based off of antiquated technology for the most part. The SSP, it just wasn't durable enough. It didn't have the reliability for it to, but they played. They were in there to play. They were in there to make contributions and to attempt to get contracts. This is the first time it wasn't. CZ, being a company that is very well versed in handguns, has the ability to refocus the company. Now, what does Colt have to do? Quite frankly, it's very, very simple. You need to have a real boss go into that company with the XM17 requirements, hand it off to an engineering department and say, make me a pistol that meets this. So we could actually have a pistol that would compete in the modern military market. So they would have that. For as far as the rifles are concerned, if you look at what CZ has done with the Bren, the modernization, making modern rifles, they have the ability to potentially focus Colt into making something that's not an M16 or not an M4, making a new family of weapons, which is what needs to be done. Or, at the very least, modernize their M4 so it's up to par with some of the other ones that are out there in the industry. They're living off of 1995 technology for the most part. So having an actual gun company that's going to focus them to bring back R&D, to get back to roots for as far as being able to manufacture handguns, and then also to have the ability to manufacture CZ products into the U.S. Those of you who may not know, there was a program where Colt had worked with CZ to bring out a 40 caliber pistol. The pistol was rather successful, but Colt dropped it, probably because it wasn't a 1911. And again, that's the attitude that has to happen. Now, in order to make this successful as a transition, they're going to have to purge the entire front office of Colt. They need to get rid of the people who have put it in the position that it was in. They need to bring in people who are going to be focused on building the company, building new products, bringing it to that next level. Granted, if you look at General Keys was definitely a savior to Colt in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, a lot of General Keys' time was focused on appeasing the investors in New York. He wasn't involved as much with the day-to-day operations as a CEO should have been. He had trusted people to do that for him. Unfortunately, those are not trustworthy people. The company has potential. The name has potential. It's going to have to change and evolve. They're going to have new management in there. Again, they have to move. And the problem with them moving is the potential loss of the people that are in that manufacturing facility. If any of you have watched my video that we've had on the demise of the Colt, you would see that I talk very differently about the front office versus the factory. There's two buildings. You have the main factory where you have those people who have been known for the last century plus of building extremely well-made weapons. The people who are responsible for building probably one of the most successful rifles in history, and the quantities into that quality level. That's the one thing that Colt was very good at. They lost focus on being a development firm and manufacturing or developing new weapons platforms to a mass production facility. And that's where the whole focus went. And those are the people that made sure that happened. And those are also the people who are the master polishers, the master manufacturers, the people who built the pythons and all that. That's where those people were. And when you walked into that part of Colt, that's where you felt that pride and you felt that the true Colt, the Colt that I loved. But when you walked into that front office, that separate building where you had administration, engineering, finance, and all that, that was a whole different ballgame. That was where the problems took place that cost the company for as far as the lack of R&D, the lack of direction, the lack of focusing on new products, and also proper planning for as far as how to separate law enforcement, commercial, and military, and to make sure that all three were always served so you weren't losing customers. And of course, you had the political decisions that were made with stopping production of firearms and so on and so forth. That is where the problems took place. And that goes back even to General Keys' watch, was the fact that the company was solely focused on government contracts, and the R&D was lacking because they were bringing in so much money, R&D could sit in their ass and not do anything. When I was there, I sat in the office and pretty much played with General Keys along with my boss, Mike Rising, to release the LE6940, because Colt, at that time, the last time they introduced a product to any of the markets was in 1996, which is the LE6920. And here it was in 2009, before they would release the next a new product, which was the 6940, which was still to this day Colt's crown jewel. You had a failure with the attorneys, who lacking to do proper patent searches, which would cost Colt a good sum of money, and also royalties on their one-piece upper receivers for violating Colt Carlos's patent. You need to have competent leadership. The leadership that they have right now, Dennis Vayu was I have a lot of respect for him. He was awesome to work with when he was in charge of R&D. Did a great job at that, but unfortunately, when he took the helm, he was left with a complete shit sandwich. He had all the problems that were already there from previous owners, previous CEOs, not having any R&D, and Dennis was unable to focus on getting people to manufacture, develop new products, and also he was unable to fire the people that were accountable. Unfortunately, his relationships with people clouded his judgment on who needed to go. He fired the wrong people, which was a major problem. He fired the wrong people. And even on Dennis's watch, he has failed to bring out new products that would help this company survive. On his watch, we have still seen more 1911s, saw some retro guns, and we've also saw a demise in Colt's ability to manufacture in-house. You're seeing the ability of them to outsource parts to build guns, which that's totally what was the wrong thing to do. Now, did he have a choice because of the cost of the unions and whatnot? Maybe there was some politics that went into that, but unfortunately, the name the brand was cheapened when they did start doing all that outsourcing, because that's what made Colt special. The manufacturing those parts in-house to those drawings, the quality control, that's what set Colt apart from everybody else. And that's what we continue to say with a lot of the videos. We talk about the new Colts are not the same as the old Colts. The reason why we bought the mil-spec Colts, the ones that were made during the time when they were making M4s and M16A2s and whatnot, was you had that quality control, you had the TDP, you had checking metrology, you had all that was done along with their military guns. Now, does it make sense to do that when you don't have military guns to manufacture any longer? Perhaps not. But the fact that they would fire out their name like they did with that Colt Custom company out of Texas here, who was making the Expanse and who was making several of these other rifles, not a good idea. Branding your name out, to all these other products that had nothing to do with what you were doing, not a good idea. They really cheapened the name. CZ has the specialty, the expertise. They have the experience, I think, to lead Colt into the proper direction that can potentially bring them back. Again, it's not Phi Beta Kappa what they have to do. If you are a military manufacturer and you're designed to do large contracts, you have to make products that are relevant in today's market. When you have the situation where they have fired pretty much every competent engineer that they've had, I look at when I was there, I look at some of the best engineers that they had: Larry Robbins, Paul Hawkstrait. Right before that, you had Mike LaPlante. You had people who were real brilliant engineers. You had Greg Rosum, who was an incredible pistol designer. Paul Hawkstrait were pistols. They're all gone. What they have, they don't have anything left who actually can manufacture and develop new products, new R&D. They don't have any of those engineers left. They fired them all. So CZ, one of the best things they could probably do is try to go back to some of these original Colt engineers and try to get them back to start rebooting their R&D. Because they don't have anything to work with right now, for the most part. Well, hell, probably the best person that they've got right now is a guy who's in their model shop. Art's probably one of the finest model makers I've ever seen. Not to mention, he's also done engineering work. He's done a lot of product development. That's been talent that has been very much untapped within the company. That's an individual who could definitely help them come into a new era with new product development. But we have to have a proper head of engineering, vice president of engineering. We need to get rid of all these VPs that are useless. And we also have to have people there who are competent and who know what they're doing. When I was there, people would get hired and they would get management positions based off of their position in the Marines, which was a complete and total fail. It was a complete failure. We had a vice president of manufacturing and engineering whose background was human resources in the Marine Corps. Never spent one day in a classroom for engineering. Knew nothing about manufacturing development. Knew nothing about the finance. Knew nothing about leading people into projects. In fact, to do a demonstration, he'd have somebody come and teach him how to shoot. So that's how people were hired, and that was a problem. You need to have real engineers who are in charge of these types of things. You need to have a real engineer who's in charge of engineering. So having competent people is key, which is why I say you have to purge that management structure. And hopefully CZ has done some nice analytical research on the company, its successes, its failures, and knows what needs to be done. But by them being independent, coming in, coming out, and taking over, I hope that they have that foresight to bring people in who know what they're doing. Another question that's been brought up is the fate of Colt Canada. Well, due to the fact that Colt Canada is owned by Colt Defense, I would imagine that would be part of the sale. I guess I can't even really comment on that, of where that will go. Colt Canada was a successful entity, especially when it was Dymaco, when it was autonomous from Colt, and Colt didn't sink its teeth in and basically drain it. That company also has had many failures due to its Colt Defense leadership. When it was run by Jeff McLeod, it was an incredibly well-made, well-run company. Excellent contracts, quality control was tremendous. In fact, many of the customers who had Dymaco rifles felt that they were much better rifles that were made here in the U.S. Hopefully, CZ will let those guys alone, let them do what they do, and do it well. So those are really my thoughts on it. Now, again, this is not a done deal. There's a lot of things that have to happen with it because of being a U.S. government contractor, being bought by a foreign government. So there's certainly a lot of things that still have to go and fall into position before the deal is finalized. From what we're reading, it looks like that it is pretty much hitting the final stride of it. I do hope for Colt's sake that this does go through. I do hope that the CZ has taken a really good analytical view at the company, its assets, its liabilities, its people, and the people who are assets and liabilities, and replaces them with people who are of the right mindset and the right skill set to move the company forward and to bring it back. It is an American icon. It certainly would be sad to see, made in Hartford, Connecticut, not being on the sides of those guns. But we're in a time where our political system is against the industry, whether it be on the state or federal level. Connecticut has been anti-gun for many, 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 many years. Its cost of living up there, its cost with the unions, its ability to compete in the market because of all those costs have been vastly affected as well. Moving it out of that state is really the only viable option to get them to be more competitive and in prices. I do hope that if they do that, they are able to relocate a lot of their key people who have been around for a long time, who know what they're doing. It's a very, very difficult thing when you have moves like that, especially at a company like that where you have just generations and generations of people who worked for it. So we certainly will keep you abreast as more things come up. Again, these are my opinions based on my experience in the past and what I see as a potential future. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better share, and please consider being part of our Patreon family. We're a self-funded company. Thank you.